Okay, now that we've learned how to create parametric constraints for a variety of different cases, let's talk about how we can import parametric constraints from an external ASCII text file. Sometimes this is a more efficient way than manually creating the parametric constraints individually. So I'm going to open up a sample of an ASCII text file of parametric constraints that we can import into the corridor. And in this example, we're going to adjust our pavement design or our pavement layers. So our first two pavement layers here, we're going to adjust their thicknesses. And the new thicknesses and values are inside of this pavement design.txt file. So if we go in here and we look at this, open this up with any kind of text editor, you can see the formatting. We have a parametric constraint label called pavement depth 1 and pavement depth 2. We have the type of parametric constraint label it is. It's a distance label. And we have the start values, the stop values, as well as the start stations, the stop stations, and then whether or not it's going to be enabled when you go to import this particular text file. So you could set up a text file like this for all of your parametric constraint labels that are defined in your template, and you could import this directly into the corridor objects dialog box and automatically have everything populated. So sometimes that's a more efficient method to use than manually creating the parametric constraints one by one. So I'm just going to show you how this works real quick. So let's close this. Go back to our corridor objects, go up to corridor objects, want to locate our corridor, go over to our parametric constraints category here. And if you recall, we created all these individually one by one, somewhat time consuming. So if we go and use this method of just importing from an ASCII text file, you're going to see how easy this is to do. Now again, I'm going to deactivate our corridor processing, so I'm going to toggle the lock off here for open, and then I'm going to go over here to the import parametric constraint button. I'm going to go locate my pavement design ASCII text file. It has my pavement design values in there for my new pavement layers. I'm going to click open, and then notice it adds the two parametric constraints for my pavement layer 1 and pavement layer 2 to the corridor objects dialog. And now to simply update the corridor, we'll just go and activate the corridor processing, and the new pavement layer values will be assigned to the corridor, and the cross sections and model will update, and everything is good to go. And one last thing to note here is not only can we import parametric constraints from the ASCII text file, we can also export all these parametric constraints along with their start values and end values and the start stations and end stations. If you simply select all the parametric constraints in the dialog and you go to the export parametric constraint button, now at this point we can export all the parametric constraint labels and their starting values and stopping values, starting stations and end stations. We can export those out to a file, so we'll go over here to our Bentley training folder and we'll export these out and just call these parametric constraints all.txt. So we're going to save all those parametric constraint labels and their values inside of this file, and we'll click save, say yes, and they get exported out. Okay, now that the constraints have been exported, let's take a look at the file that was created. So that file I called parametric constraints all.txt. We just double click on that and open it. You can see there's all our constraint labels in there with our values and everything we need. So we could adjust values here and then re-import it if we wanted to update the corridor objects dialog and the corridor. So sometimes this is a more efficient manner than manually creating the parametric constraints. You can just use a import and export type of workflow to make changes to the corridor fairly quickly.